check it out if you guys have any, if you guys missed anything. So you can always go back and then look at the sessions. But this 1 hour that we are gonna be together is gonna be focusing on all about PCF control. If you have any questions other than that, yeah, feel free to send me an email or ping me, or on LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere. Yeah. So let's go and look at. So you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub. Um, as Robert mentioned, he watched one of my videos. I also do videos as well. Or you can go to powermaverick.dev. That's my site where I basically post my blogs. So you can follow my blogs as well. So what is PCF custom control? So most of you I've seen, what I've heard is you guys have worked with PCF custom control. It's so initially when we were having we have been developing in CRM for quite a while now. But one of the drawbacks of CRM over the period of time that we have seen is it's really that we have to work with the UI that Microsoft has provided. But if you want to do something other than what is available out of the box, we had to build some kind of web resources, either using HTML, CSS, or even AngularJS. But with this PCF custom controls, we can build awesome looking controls without any design limitations, because we can use n number of technologies to create those controls. Well, not n, but lot of other supported technologies like Node, TypeScript, React. We can use Office UI Fabric. We can use SignalR, cognitive services. So those kind of technologies we can use, and then we can create nice looking controls, and then have them look as out of the box feature in CRM. That's the beauty of using PCF custom controls. So you're not limited with CRM's UI anymore. You can expand the UI and then have n number of functionalities added, which gives an enhanced user experience. So going forward, so what's the difference between web resources and custom controls? We had web resources. We could build HTML. We could build AngularJS. But what's the difference? And custom controls, why there was a need to introduce custom controls. So HTML web resources, as most of you know, cannot be loaded on a mobile phone. So if you are creating an app, and now if you're creating a model-driven app are responsive. So you can have one app created, it loads on phone, it looks good. But if you're using any of the web resources, then those don't work on the phone. So it's of no use, right? So, but custom controls renders on phone as well. So now that's the advantage. Second thing is, if you know from a timing perspective, whenever the HTML web resources loads on the form, those are the last one to loads in terms of timing. So the JavaScript loads, the form control loads, and then everything else. Once everything else is loaded, that's when the next thing that will load is the web resource. So it used to be an inconvenience to a lot of users, because if they have a very short SLA for the load time, then what we used to do is we used to put these web resources in a tab, collapse the tab, and then tell users, if you want to look at the web resources, then expand the tab, which would improve the load time of the overall form. Well, now if you're using custom controls, you don't need to do that anymore, because the load time is um, it loads with all the other form components. So it's not loading separately, it's loading along with the form components. So your load time is exactly the same. It won't impact your load time a lot. Then it has optimized performance. And because if you're building HTML web resources, then you have to take care of how it would perform. Then there's one single solution file that gets created, so it's easier to maintain. Whereas if you're creating web resources, sometimes you create multiple files Like for example, if you're creating an Angular app, then you have to create one or two HTML files. You have to create an app file, JavaScript file, and you have to keep on maintaining their dependencies. Whereas in this, you just create a TypeScript, you create a PCF project, and then once it gets loaded into CRM, you just have one custom control file that you're seeing in the solution. So the management from the deployment perspective, from the ALM perspective is pretty simple and neat. And custom controls are reusable, whereas HTML may be reusable if you have written it in a very generic fashion, because you don't have a configuration screen for HTML web resources, whereas custom controls comes with a configuration screen. Web API accesses through the context. So you get the context itself in the custom controls, whereas there is no context available in the web HTML, web resource HTMLs. So for using the context, you have to currently also have to use xrm.page, or you have to do windows.parent.forms, which are not natively available and not supported right now. So but that's not the case with custom controls. With custom controls, the CRM context is rendered as part of the control itself. It is very responsive, so you don't have to worry about how to make it responsive. You just create a control and then let Microsoft's framework worry about the responsive UI. Okay, you can access device features like location. You can access the camera, file input, output, all those kind of things can also be accessed through the custom controls. So that's the beauty of using custom controls over a regular HTML web resource. Any questions on this?
Danish, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I understand that we have been using web resources forever now to build any custom feature or functionality, wherein we have to leverage either HTML, Angular, or any other web technologies, right? So, is PCF a replacement for web resource? So, we should stop using web resources. Is PCF the answer for all the single page applications that we have been building, or is it like literally replacing just one control? And can PCF have composite controls? Like, maybe I want to build a web resource that has one text box and one maybe option set. So can I do that using PCF, or it is just limited to one single field or a data grid? So those are the questions that I have around it.
Right. So it's not totally replacing the HTML, because HTML also has other advantages to it as well. But if you're talking about creating controls, like you talked about creating a text box control or a option set control, that I would say should be replaced with a custom control, because that is where it would make more sense to put it as a custom control, because you would like to make those as reusable components. Whereas in HTML, you have to take care of CSS, you have to take care of a lot of things. So from the maintenance perspective and from the implementation perspective, it will become very tedious for using HTML. But HTML, when would HTML come into picture is if say you want to show a website, load a website, right? Instead of using iframes, you can use HTML web resources. So one of the example where I use HTML web resources is Canvas app uh, can be loaded as a custom control. But if you want to pass some parameters, like you want to do some logic, and then based on that logic, you want to show one or the other custom control as Canvas app, then there's no real way of doing it. So that is when you would be using an HTML web resource to render some of the other things like show Canvas apps. So it's not totally going away. That's why Microsoft has not deprecated HTML web resources. It's still there, but along with custom controls, we are expanding the capabilities of the platform. But if you're talking about making something reusable, then those reusable components should be created in custom controls.
So
If it
it's
is something specific for a client, or you're doing something where the logic is involved, and then you're showing some like showing a Canvas app, then you can go with HTML web resource.
So it's uh, the way I take it is, wherever you feel like it's a component that can be reused at multiple places, then go for PCF. Because let me give you a simple scenario, right? Let's say I want to create a master detail, right? I want to have a list of records, and on the right hand side, I want to see the detail of the record, right? So I click on it. On the right side, I see the detail of the record, right? You getting it?
Yep.
So what would that be? Would you make it as a web resource, or you would make it as a PCF control?
Um, well, you could do either of them. Now, it would depend on you. Do you see a
Okay.
need where this custom control can be reused on some other projects?
Mm-hmm.
Then definitely go with custom controls rather than going
Okay.
with HTML.
So the
And also the other
emphasis
thing that
is
you would ask your clients or your project managers uh, is there a need for the control to be responsive, and is this control going to be loaded on a mobile phone, right? So
okay. Yep.
if that's one of the, if it's going to be rendered on mobile phone, then you cannot even think of using web resources, right? I mean HTML. You have to then
Right.
think of custom controls all the time. So these are the things you might want to consider too.
Right. Thanks,
And
Tani.
and to your second part of the question where you said composite controls, you cannot do composite controls. You still have to go with one control. Like if it's one field you're going to transform, then it's going to be one control.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So moving on. Um, so how do you start with creating your PCF controls? So first thing is I've also included this in the invite as well. How do you prepare your dev environment? So the environment, and when I said dev environment, that means your machine, right? Your development machine. How would you prepare your development machine? You need to first install Node.js and or npm. I've given a link in the invite. So if you open up the invite, you would see the steps to prepare your machine, right? So first is to install Node.js. Second is to install .NET Framework 4.6.2. If you already have installed Visual Studio 2017 or 2015, you would already have 4.6.2. So you don't need to install that separately. You can skip that step. Then I personally like to use Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio, because the PCF projects have a different extension. They don't work with Visual Studio today, but with Visual Studio Code, any type of project extension works with it because they don't have kind of templates. They work based on folder structure. So I like to use Visual Studio Code. So you can install Visual Studio Code as well. And then last, uh, and this is the very important thing, is you have to install Power Apps command line interface. This is where you would get that capability of utilizing the framework. Okay. Again, it's in the invite, so go check it out. And if you have any questions or if you run into any issues, then let me know. Yeah. So you
So
can
I
have.
actually have a
Mm.
question using Visual Studio Code. So how do you actually achieve a solution model with Visual Studio Code? Because if you're not using Visual Studio and using code, as you mentioned, it's a folder-based hierarchy.
Mhm.
So there is no concept of solutions and creating your library of PCF controls in that case.
Uh,
Like if I have five
yes,
different PCF controls built, all of them have to be, their own five separate projects, which cannot be brought
yes.
into one solution.
Right. So let's talk about that during our course of the training,
Hmm.
and I'll answer your question once we reach that point.
Sounds good.
Okay, so PCF project structure. Uh, Now, once you initiate your PCF project, which I'm going to show you the demo today, this is just an overview, right? This first session is just giving you what PCF controls are, what we're going to do in coming days. So this session is just plainly working on the overview. I know I'm showing a lot of PowerPoints, so don't worry about it. We are actually going to dive into the demo itself, and then every session after today would all include looking at the code and looking at the source code, right? Um, so I wanted to capture the essence of what that project structure looks like today. So if you initiate the PCF project, and PCF project has a file extension of .pcf prog. It's not a Visual Studio SLN file. It's a .pcf prog. So if it is a .pcf prog, then it's a PCF project. And then there's a concept of CDS project as well. So PCF project is your Power App custom Power App component frameworks controls, and then your CDS project is your solution project. So we are going to look at both of them. So in this case, as you can see, there's a folder structure. So I'm going to bring my. So you can see that this is so when you initiate, you would only get this two files: control manifest input file and then index file. So index.ts file is where you would be writing your code, and control manifest input XML file is where you would be defining your controls configuration. So as the name suggests, it's a control manifest file, right? So it gives you the controls metadata, or it gives you the controls, what the control name is, what's the description, what are all the configuration items, what the namespace, and all those stuff is what will be defined in the control manifest file. Now, if you want to create CSS file, I normally recommend to create first CSS folder, and then underneath that you can create a CSS file. You can create n number of CSS files, and then you can reference those CSS files in your control manifest, which we're going to look into it next. Okay, so moving forward, so I was talking about the manifest file, and um, manifest file is very important file because manifest file defines what your control name is, what is the version of your control, what is the description, what properties would it hold, what resources does it uses, like what is the code file, how many CSS files are there, where are they located, how many resource files are there, where are they located, and some of the feature usage. So the manifest file is an XML file. It starts with manifest tag, then you have a control tag, and then you have this namespace, which is very necessary. When you initiate the control, this namespace and the constructor would auto populate for you. What you have to worry about once you look into the manifest file is you would need to change the display name and the description. Okay. Then this is the property tag. So property tag is nothing but defining your configuration. So here you would define your name, your display name, description, and data type. Then you would define what your usage is, like is it a bound input, and we are going to look into manifest file in detail. I'm just giving you an overview, and then some required yes or no, and then here are the resources that we are going to use in the project is what is defined here, and then some of the feature usage. Okay, so moving on, then we have what is the event execution. So once we initiate the PCF project, there are certain functions available. So let me first show you what the functions are. This screen shouldn't have been here. Okay, maybe this is it. Okay, so there are, when you initiate a PCF control, there are 4 functions that gets auto implemented in the index.ts file. One is the constructor, init, update view, and destroy. So, and when your control loads on a form, the event execution pipeline is very important to understand. So when the control loads, first thing that gets loaded is the constructor. Then is the init method. Now init method is where you would initialize all your controls. You initialize your remote server, you initialize your control, like let's say I'm gonna change the attribute from a text box, and then I'm gonna show a drop down. So that is what I would be writing the code to replace that text box into a drop down. So that initialization of control will happen here. Then the update view is invoked, and the update view is where you would write the code whenever the value is changing. So for example, you clicked on the drop down, now drop down value changed. So that's when the update view would get invoked. Okay, and we are going to look into all of these in detail in the coming sessions as well. So don't worry if you don't get it right now, because we're going to look into it into details. And the next thing is the let's say you want to change the output. So now here's the thing: PCF control, it is part of the CRM or part of the Power Platform framework, but it still uses it still follows a disconnected architecture. When I say disconnected architecture, what I mean is the values in the Power Platform or CDS are transferred over to PCF control. PCF control then takes those values, shows it on the UI, and then you play with the data. Now data is transformed. Once the data is transformed, you have to send the data, updated data back to CDS. So this is how you send the data back to CDS. So you use notify output changed, which calls the get outputs. And this is the important method. Anytime a get output is called, if you want to send the data back to CRM, the updated data back to CRM, you would write the logic in the get outputs method. Okay, and whenever the get output method is called, because the output is changing, the update view gets invoked as well. Okay, so now how do you build a PCF project? So I'm not going to go through
Danish,
this. Mhm.
if you don't mind, can you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah, sure.
So this get output, right? Get outputs. So you said this is the method that's responsible for pushing the data back to PCF or to CDS.
Yes,
So do you mean that it pushes or sets the property of that field that we are binding to, or
right.
does it actually? Okay, so it's not like it goes into
No, it
CDS and
does.
updates, or
No,
so it's
no, no.
just the setting the property of that particular field that we are binding to.
Right. So if the values are changing, for
Mm-hmm,
example, you are on the form
mm-hmm,
and you implemented a PCF control, and then you changed, and then from the drop down you selected a value. If
mm-hmm.
that value, and you normally see unsafe changes on the form, right? Whenever you change something on the form, you
Right,
see unsafe changes.
right.
If you don't return the value back to CDS using get outputs, you won't see unsafe changes. That means the form has not even changed.
Okay,
So this get outputs is where the data is sent back to CDS, set on that attribute. Once it gets set on the attribute, not to the server, it is done on the client side only. So the
right.
client side attribute gets changed. The form is now from it now shows unsafe changes, and if there is a function on change event, if you have registered an on change event on that attribute, that would get
That would get
invoked as
triggered.
well. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna skip this and let's move on to the slide. So these are all the libraries that you can use today. So you can use Node.js, Angular. You can even use Webpacks. TypeScript is the center of everything. You can use Mocha, Office UI Fabric, and React. We are going to cover React and Office UI Fabric in one of the session. But you can also try, once you have some understanding of TypeScript, React, and Office UI Fabric, you can even try using the other packages as well. So how do you do the configuration? So configuration for a field type. Now, there are two types of custom controls. One is called field type custom control, and the other one is called data set custom control. What's the difference? So field type is where you would be associating that custom control to a field or an attribute in CDS or in CRM. Data set is where you would be replacing a view or a subgrid with a custom control. And when you initiate a custom control, you have to define what template are you going to use. Are you going to replace a subgrid into a custom control, or are you going to replace an attribute into a custom control? So based on that, what I've shown here is I'm showing the configuration for a field custom control. So on the form, you go to the field properties, you say add custom control, then you get this window, you select your custom control, you see the name, you see the description over here, you see the types that it supports, and you click on add. Once you click on add, then make sure you're selecting this radio buttons, because I would tell you, out of 10 out of 9 times, I always forget this. I always keep, like, when you add it, the custom control gets added, but these upper checkboxes on the default ones are always selected. And then you do the configuration, you save it, you publish the form, you go in CRM and then say, hey, why my control is not loading up? I did the configuration correctly, but it still doesn't show up. And then next thing you know, oh, you missed to check these things. So make sure that you check this. It happens all the time to me. And then you do this configuration on this fourth step, and then save the form and then publish it. And you should be able to see your control. Okay, straightforward. Okay, so
Yep.
so there already exists a community, and I believe Robert mentioned that before, that he has been using controls built by other people. And I believe, Robert, you were referring to Pcf Gallery, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Pcf Gallery, yes, correct.
Yeah, and it's been a very great site. A lot of people have been posting their custom controls, and the cool thing that a lot of people don't know about using PCF Gallery is, if you have an idea of a custom control, but you don't want to spend time, or you think that it is way out of your league to create that idea into a custom control, you can even share an idea on that website, and then me or a few other community members, we keep checking the idea page, see if there is any new idea that can be implemented, and then we go ahead and then create those custom controls. Then the other thing that I would be using a lot in all the sessions is PCF Custom Control Builder. Now this is an XRM Toolbox plugin, so you can install it on your XRM Toolbox, and it uses all the PCF CLI and, under the hood. This was implemented by me many months back. So I'll walk you through that builder as well. But if you have any suggestions or anything, please let me know on those custom control as well. Yeah. Okay. Someone is trying to join to a phone. Accept. Okay. So moving forward. Okay. So moving forward, let's go and see. Okay. So here is what I would like to highlight everyone, and I'll be sharing this slide with everyone today. Whenever you're using a React in your app or in your PCF control, React or any third-party libraries that you include as part of PCF control, as of today, it will get, and if you're using PCF control on multiple attributes, like same control, but multiple times on the form, then it would load the React libraries multiple times, even if it's the same library. So let's say you have used a React library for Office UI Fabric, and you have created one control, but that one single control you have used 5 times on the form, then it will load that Office UI Fabric library 5 times on the form, which causes performance. Now, Microsoft is already aware of this issue, and I think so they're working on it. I haven't heard if they have resolved it, but they said that it should be, they are working to improve that, and it should be resolved pretty soon. And then PCF control is also available on Canvas app. So you can even use PCF controls on Canvas app as well. But Canvas app only supports field type components as of today. Now, whenever you deploy your you update your PCF control on your development or your UAT instance, make sure that your solution is always incremented, because if you don't increment your solution, you don't actually see the updates happening. And then whenever you're using any of the features like Web API, if you want to use Web API, you have to make sure that you have activated the Web API feature in the manifest file. Okay. And then I've also provided some of the links, so this would be good to know. Okay. Any questions so far?
So can we think like PCF controls just asynchronous controls always?
Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be. So take an example. If you go to the PCF Gallery, you would see there are a lot of tools, like dependent option set is one I can think of. So I don't like to use this browser, so let me go to another browser. So like this to-do list, list is instantaneous. The one control dependent option set. So this is instantaneous. So if you see this, you select option 1, and based on option 1, the child option sets are showing up. If you select option 2, then based on the option 2, the child option set for 2 is showing up. So it's instantaneous then and there itself. So it's not asynchronous.
If you have to make a web API, it has to be asynchronous call, right? Like web API calls.
Yes, only for web API call, it has, yeah, it would need to be asynchronous. Yes.
So this dependent option set, like, are they going back to the database to fetch the values?
Yeah. So every control is created in a very unique way. So there's no like one way of doing things. But for this particular thing, he created a web resource, and then he's pulling the configuration from the web resource.
Oh, okay.
And it's a XML or JS web resource. But for example, weather widget. This is the one that I created. Now this is using Web API, but this is not only using Web API. It is actually doing a call to an external service called Open Weather Data. So based on the zip code, you get the latest 5-day, 3-hour data for that particular zip code. And it also, now one of the things that I haven't shown in this demo is it also utilizes the current location as well. So it shows the current location data too. So these are the features. Now this looks instantaneous because the API call is pretty quickly. It responds pretty quickly, but it's an asynchronous call.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the control. So new from blank. Okay, I've created a folder here.
Danish, would you be covering the approach wherein we start from the scratch, or for these sessions we are going to rely on XRM toolbox component that's there?
So because this is a basic training, I would be relying on the XRM Toolbox plugin. But it's a consensus that we could take as a group. What do you want? Do you want to start from scratch, or do you want to use the toolbox? I can send out. You don't have to reply now. I can send out um, a form,
A
and then you
poll.
can just fill out that form.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just
Sorry,
want.
sorry. So it means like so basic means not using this XRM toolbox and writing the commands in the command line. Is that what
Yes. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to ease out, I've created this, right? So you could either use this, or you could even write commands using the command line interface. So you have a choice. Um, Now, if you're going to use command line interfaces, then it takes time to write the commands. Whereas here, the command's already written for you, so you don't have to worry about what you need to type in.
Yeah, and actually, so whatever command you're going to enter in the command line, it displays here exactly those commands as well. So you
Right.
know what is there, what is going
No,
Mhm.
to.
I mean, I was thinking from the perspective wherein, I know Danish has built this great tool that gives us a jump start from 0 to 10 to get started with PCF. But I was thinking from a perspective wherein, if we know what's going on in the back end, what the tool is actually doing, we would actually appreciate it more, right? In terms of what the tool is doing. So
Yeah.
I know it's going to do a lot of stuff in the back end, but if we get an overview of what the tool is doing on our behalf, that would be good to know.
Yeah.
That,
Sure.
that is what I'm saying. That is what overview of what is going to happen in the background is what is seen
Yeah.
on the right side screen.
So let me send out that form, and then you vote for it, and then based on the consensus of the group, then I can go that direction. So if you want to have a CLI approach, or if you want to use the tool approach, and then if you want to use the tool approach, if that's what the consensus comes out to be, I will explain what's going on in the backend, so you are not totally unaware of what's going on in the backend. Sounds
That
good?
would be awesome. Yep.
Okay, so this is the tool. If you are not sure about how to get this tool in your XRM toolbox, then you have to go to the configuration page and tool library, and then search for PCF or search by my name, and then you should be able to see the control, and then just install it. Okay. Once you have installed it and loaded this control, now here are basic toolbar. So new has your new from blank and new from template. Now new from template is pulling the controls dynamically from PCF Gallery. So let's say you liked one of the control. Now what I normally suggest is you should be aware of the code as well if you're going to use it in one of your project, because if there is any issue, then what happened? Oh, there you go. If there is any issue, then there are two ways. Like you have to either contact the person who created the control, but if you are already aware of the code and the code is available on GitHub, you can and if there are any issues, you can actually create a pull request and then fix their code and then help them out, right? And help other fellows as well. So you can start with a template, and then let's say you like the control, but you want to expand it. Like let's say address validation is really great, but this is only working for say Europe, countries in the Europe. Now you want to build something for US. You can certainly start from a template. Just download the control, and then you would get the source control or source code in your local directory. It downloads it from GitHub, and then once you have the source code, then you can start customizing from the template. So it's kind of a, when you start the Power Apps or when you start a Power Automate from a template, it's kind of following the same concept. But if you're starting from a blank, then everything is blanked out. You can give your own namespace, give your own control name, and then this is a template that I was talking about. So either it's a field or a data set. And then once you give that, then you can create it. Once it's created, and you can open it in a Visual Studio Code editor. And then this is the solution details that I was talking about. So this is your component details, which is .pcf project, Pcf prog. And then this solution details is your CDS project, which is prefixed, which has an extension CDS prog. Okay. Then you can edit an existing PCF control. So let's say I already have a PCF control. So
one thing I've noticed is that Visual Studio command prompt location, it differs with each one, and that exact file has to be there. You have to search for that file where that if you go to that end on the.
yeah, so there's an easy way of finding that. Yes, thanks Sudhakar for pointing that out. So how do you find that file? So control location is your location of the folder. Now, as one of Varun's question was, can you create composite controls? And I said, no, you cannot, because right now the limitation is if you're creating one control, it should be in its own directory. So what I normally do is I create a fresh brand new folder and then give the path of that folder here. So that would be my current location. Okay. And then your Visual Studio prompt location is your command batch file. So how to find command batch file is you go to your Visual Studio Code. If it's on your, like, you can search for Visual Studio Code, and then you go to more and then go open file location. And obviously it has to open in a different window. And then here is where you would see the shortcut. So now what you do is you go to properties of that shortcut and you say open file location, which would open this file location. And then here now you have a you have access the common 7. Now the batch file is not actually in common 7. Batch file is in tools. So common 7 tools is where it is. Okay, so go to tools, common 7 tools. And then here you would just search for batch file. And it is called vsdev cmd bat file. Okay, now how to access this file? I've also, so you can just say properties, and then copy this location. And then you just add it over here. Now, I've also mentioned how to find this location on the GitHub page as well. And before we move on, I'm going to show you one more thing. So all this help is provided on the Microsoft Help Microsoft document. And Microsoft document also has this community resources. And this is where you would see that it has linked to Pcf Gallery. It has blogs over here. It has all these videos mentioned over here. And then it also mentions this tool here as well on the community resources. I'm going to expand this this particular document to put a lot of my details on it, how the tool actually works. So look out for that updates. I have to work on the documentation for this, but this would appear over here as well. So it's on the Microsoft document, docs.microsoft.com. Okay, so yeah, so that's your control location. That's your Visual Studio command prompt. Now Visual Studio command prompt is not required if you're just going to work on the component. I have something in pipeline where I'm going to modify this entire UI to make it more user friendly, because this Visual Studio command prompt location is only needed for the solution ms build, because the solution build command uses ms build command, and build command is only executed using the Visual Studio command prompt. But if you're just going to use the component details section, then just by going with control location and something in the Visual Studio command prompt location should do the trick. Okay. So next, going back to your to the toolbar authentication profile, we are going to come back to this in some advanced sessions. Once we have a good feel of PCF control, then we would look into authentication profiles. You can go to PCF Gallery directly from the tool. You can download these sample controls from here. So this is coming from again from GitHub. Microsoft has hosted a lot of sample controls that you could download and then experiment with them. So it's a nice way to get head start on creating custom controls. Then PowerUp CLI, as I mentioned, that's the core piece that we have in the tool, which gives us the ability to interact with the framework. And this it keeps on updating once in a while. You can follow Power. I'll share a forums site where they Microsoft keeps posting if there are any updates to the CLI. So you can download the CLI from here if you don't have it on your computer, or you can even update the CLI from here as well. So let's say Microsoft said that there's a new version of CLI, go ahead and update your CLI component, then you can just come here and then update the CLI. And there are these links available directly to go to Microsoft Docs or to go to Power Apps component framework. This is again Microsoft documentation. Then we have some demo links, some blogs, forums, and idea links as well. So this takes you to the forum. So this is the forum I was talking about, where we discuss what are the issues with current Microsoft current PCF controls, what's coming in. So they just announced the support for .NET Core for Common Data Service. So that was posted here as well. So you can see a lot of things happening here. Okay. And then you have the settings page. So settings is nothing but what it does is Visual Studio command prompt location, you have to set it up only once, and then it goes and saves it as a setting. So you don't have to do it all the time. But let's say you installed Visual Studio 2019 and you want to point it to 2019 and you're uninstalling 2017. So this is the place where you can always go and update your settings. So you can change the location of your working directory. You can change the location of your Visual Studio command prompt here. Okay. And then these are the sections that I just spoke about, the component details. This is the section details. This is the authentication profile, which we're going to look into it at later point of time. And then you can see that the PCF CLI version is mentioned over here, and the NPM version is mentioned over here as well. Okay, and then here is the console. So as Sudhakar was mentioning, you can actually see the commands. So that was the idea behind it. Let's not because everyone is developer, right? So we want to look at what's going behind the scenes. So to have that perspective, when I build this, I gave the command prompt here itself, which shows the commands that are getting executed behind the scenes. So you don't feel like you're left out or you don't know what's going on behind the scene. Open for questions or any suggestions. If you want to, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions for future sessions, then yeah, let me know. No questions?
I'm sure there would be many questions when we actually jump into creating one.
Right. But yeah, even if you don't have any questions, if you have any suggestions on how we want to proceed, because I want this to be interactive, right? How we had today, like you guys were asking questions, and I was responding. I want these sessions to be interactive and not just one way. So if you have any suggestions and you want me to have these sessions in a different way, or do something differently, then please let me know.
I have a question. You said that you can use PCF control in Canvas application.
Hmm.
And also you mentioned one more point where you said that whenever you wanna show Canvas app in CRM, you need to use custom control.
Right.
So, so it means that you can create a Canvas app, add a PCF control there, another one, and add that, create a, and that then use it in the in CRM, create another can. I'm confused here.
No,
Is
I get what
it,
I think so. I got what you were trying to do. What you were trying to say is have a custom control, put it on Canvas app, and have Canvas app embed on the model driven app.
yeah.
You can do that, but why do you, my question is, why do you want to do that?
No, no.
If you have a custom control, so let me go back to that PCF control just to show you. So if you are on PCF Gallery, when we are creating controls, right, those controls are supported on model driven as well as Canvas app, both. So this one is
Okay,
where it says it's supported on both. It's supported on Canvas app as well as model driven. When I made this app, I actually tested it on Canvas app, and then I made sure that it will work on model driven app.
okay,
And if you go to the main home page, you should see there's a marker over here which says, okay, this is only made for model driven app. This will not work for Canvas app. When it would
okay,
not work for Canvas app is when you're using a CRM context. If you're using CRM context, then it won't work with Canvas app because Canvas app doesn't have the CRM context yet.
okay, okay, okay.
But if you're
Are you
able,
going?
Mhm.
Do you have plan to show both?
Certainly, yeah. Whenever we build a control, we can build a control in a way that it doesn't utilizes any of the context, where then it becomes supported on Canvas app as well. So yeah, sure, we can try that.
Yeah. Thank you.
What do you mean by CRM context? Because I actually took one of the PCF Gallery apps that was indicated for model driven apps only, but I was able to import it to a Canvas app with no problem. So maybe it was just um,
E-
published incorrectly.
well, so here, so this is because this is a community, and Guido maintains this. We have to tell Guido that, hey, I've built this control, and this control supports model as well as Canvas app. Sometimes people don't actually test it on Canvas app, so they say that, okay, this is only going to work with model driven app because I don't have time to test it on Canvas app, but it might work on Canvas app. If you can tell me what that control was, we can actually check the source control or source code.
Oh, oh yeah. It is a rich text editor, Tiny MCE.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That one I got.
Right. Yeah, it's just that people might have not tested it with Canvas app. That's why he said that it's only going to work on model driven app. Well, yeah, it does say. Yeah. Um, yeah, it doesn't look like it should work on Canvas app. Yeah, I don't see any issues why it won't work on Canvas app. Yeah, it doesn't have anything else in it. Just using the DOM. Yeah.
How are you able to say that, Danish? Does it?
Well, so let's take an example. Dependent option set. Come on. Okay. This is only going to work on model driven app. The reason why I say that is if you look at the code, okay, so what this what Andrew is doing here is he's looking at this web resource raw file. So what this won't ever exist in your Canvas app, because what it's doing is it's taking the context and then from the context it's trying to go and look for a web resource file, and then you know how CRM is, right? So if you're in CRM, um,
We give a URL
there's
for
a
web
specific,
resource.
yeah, there is a specific file. So he's looking at a web resource file, whichever is passed in the configuration, and then trying to pull that file and then read the configuration. This won't exist or this won't happen on Canvas app. So there is specific kind of code if you have written. If you have written a code which is pretty simple, straightforward, lightweight, it should work on Canvas app. But if you have written any code that is interacting with CRM specifically, then it might not work with Canvas app. Like sometimes I've seen people are using xrm.page. Well, xrm.page doesn't exist on Canvas app, so it's not going to work. It's not supported. You shouldn't use it, but I've seen people use it. So things like that. I can probably find one more. Yeah, face component, smart grid. So if you're looking at smart grid, oh yeah, this is using a data set. So data set, as I said, are only supported on model driven app as of today. Data set are not supported on Canvas apps. So this won't support Canvas app either. So these are the things that that would differentiate any control when it's getting built.
Okay. Is there a
Okay.
documentation page that clearly outlines those differences that we can look into?
Well, it depends on how you're coding, right? Now, if
I
as I
mean,
said, if
as for the data sets that you just talked about, right? Data sets are only supported in model-driven apps. Any constraints like those, is there a
yeah,
documentation for it?
yes, there is. So it was already open. So how to references troubleshoot limitations. So in the limitations, you will see that only fill type of components are supported in experimental preview of Canvas app, not the dataset type components. It clearly tells you this. These are the limitations. You can also access those from this link. So PCF limitations, and it will take you to those links directly. Common data service dependent APIs, including web API, along with few other, are not available for experimental preview. For individual API availability, you can read this and
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
few other. Yeah, and then also there are like common issues that are also mentioned over here, and you can go and read about those as well. What are these common issues? So like web resource file is too big. So what's the workaround? This you would run into this pretty soon if you're using too many npm packages. So let's say you used 15 20 packages, then the size of the actual web resource is going to be too big, and then the import would fail all the time. So what the workaround is that you have to try to use less libraries or less packages to reduce the size of your web resource. So things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we are little over time, but if you have any other questions, I can hang around for another 4 minutes.
Danish, if we've been accepted into this session here, are we automatically enrolled in the upcoming sessions?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Obviously, I've sent the invite, which are recurring, which is a recurring event on Tuesdays and Thursdays, um, till 5th of March.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I don't get cut off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, guys. So if there is no further questions, then that's a wrap.
Great. Thank you,
Thanks,
Danish.
All right.
Danish.
Thanks,
Really
Danish.
appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danish.